Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I just wanted to come on here today and cover the subject of wormwood. It's something that is described in the 8th chapter of the book of Revelations. And I'm going to be reading today from chapters 6 through 11 and also a portion of Isaiah 24. Now, some of the things that are described in Isaiah 24, they're already beginning to happen right now. And then some of the description of the things that will happen in that chapter will occur during the 7-year tribulation. But there is a portion of it that I'm going to read today that is currently occurring. So we're in the 24th chapter in the book of Isaiah. Some of that stuff has began happening. And so I'm going to start here at chapter 8. I'm going to start at verse number 6. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and a third part of the trees was burned up, and all the green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and it were as a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the mountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were bitter. I think right now what we've got happening is that we have a situation where this planet or system of planets or something is getting closer to the Earth. It's not like it is in some of these videos that you see here on YouTube where the thing is real big, giant thing in the sky or something. Some of that stuff is done as photoshopped and and faked and stuff. It's hard to say where this thing is right now, but it's out there somewhere, and it's causing effects in the solar system, which I'm going to mention in a little while after I read the portion from Isaiah 24 that is currently taking place right now. And then I'll mention the part of Isaiah 24 that, of course, is not happened yet, but will occur during the tribulation. So in the 24th chapter of the book of Isaiah, I'm going to read from verse 4 through 6. Now, when the thing first starts out, up between number 1 and 3, you're that 1 through 3, and then on down here, like 19 through 23, all of that stuff, that stuff will take place during the tribulation period. But right now, 4 through 6, beginning at chapter 4, it says, The earth mourneth and fadeth away, the world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants and the earth are burned, and few men left. While the burning part of the thing also is described in the book of Revelations, but the fact is that the planet is there's a curse that's devouring the earth. And right now, as time progresses, what's happening is the planet is dying, slowly but surely dying. And, we see all kinds of signs. I'm going to mention, I wrote some of this stuff down to make a case for the fact that things are just deteriorating. Where you had a few years ago, uh, let's say a year ago, you might have had, there were times in 2017 when there might have been like 200 earthquakes that occurred in a day. But today, there was, there's several websites that record these earthquake activity, a lot of them. Dutch Sense is probably one of the most popular ones that monitors all that stuff, and he has a lot of subscribers. And so people are able to go on some of these channels on YouTube here and look at the seismic activity and see how many earthquakes and things are happening. But as a friend that just did a video today, mentioned, the fact that there was over 400 earthquakes that occurred in one day. And we're talking about here in the U.S. We're talking about the number of quakes here in the U.S. So if you had, 400 and some quakes in a day in the last 24 hours, how many quakes are we having in a year? And then how many quakes are we having compared to, let's say, the number of quakes in 2017 and the number of quakes in 2016? If we go back and we look at the period of time when all of the stuff, they began to keep the records, and we went to now, and especially just the last few years, we would see that every year progressively the number of earthquakes just keeps increasing. The number of volcanoes just keeps increasing. Last year, seismologists, I remember seeing an article that where they were stating that in 2018, the seismic activity around the globe would increase, and also the magnitude intensity of the earthquakes would get stronger in 2018. Now, obviously, some of these scientists and people, they know something that we don't know. And I think all of this stuff is related to Wormwood, to this planetary system that's going to get a certain distance from the Earth at some point and cause a complete pole reversal or whatever, and flip the planet over, maybe completely flip it, which is described in Isaiah 24. Which, again, like I said, that is something in Isaiah 24, which is going to happen in the tribulation. When you see the stuff between, in chapter 8 of Revelation, at the time that stuff happens, that's when the stuff in Isaiah 24 is going to happen with the planet reeling to and fro like a drunkard. That's when you're going to see that. And a lot of people think that that describes the pole shift. So that was the Bible verses that I had to read on the subject. And then I wrote down some facts that I got right here on YouTube, and anybody can check the stuff out. You can, if you don't, it's a lot of information that I'm going to give here real quick and everything, but you can always play the video back and then look these things up, because these videos are on YouTube and they can be found on YouTube. So, excuse me, all of these things are pointing to the fact that, the stuff in the 24th chapter of the book of Isaiah is occurring right now, number one. And number two, that Wormwood planet or system of planets or whatever, it's out there. It's probably a distance from the Earth at this point, but obviously it's moving in this direction. And if its orbital path or something takes it around the sun eventually during that seven-year tribulation period, when we see that stuff that's described in chapter 8, you also have all of that talk about the 3 days of darkness, and a lot of people are saying when that planet goes around the sun and then is between the sun and the earth at some point, there's going to be a 3-day period of darkness that occurs when there's just going to be complete darkness. People have had dreams and visions about it, and I've heard about it for years. And I think, again, that that's due to the planet Wormwood. So I had the fact that back in, it was May 14th of 2014 was the first time that we heard stuff mentioned, as the term climate chaos was mentioned. And they had a meeting over in Europe, and the heads of a lot of countries got together, and it was a conference to discuss climate chaos. And during that time, the French foreign minister of France, his name was Laurent Fabius, he made a speech which was taped, and you can find that message that he gave, the speech that he gave on May 13th of 2014, where he's speaking about climate chaos becoming a problem in 500 days. There's a lot of, when you go there, all you got to do is type in climate chaos, and it'll come up, and a lot of other videos will come up on climate chaos too, and then you can click into them, and then you can see some of the stuff that's been going on between 2014 and 2018, and things are intensifying, flooding, the storms. We just had a storm here in the Detroit area that it was rain the one day, and then there was like a windstorm, and then the morning that they knew about the time the winds were going to start, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, when I was out, I was out paying some bills, and I saw all kinds of electric trucks out driving around and parking in certain locations or something and getting staged and set up for the windstorm, because they anticipated, that a lot of places were going to lose power because the wind was going to blow the tree branches down onto the power lines and knock a lot of power out. Well, that day we got, I think, 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, and then they might have been gusting to 60 at times. And that went on from about 9 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. And in that time period, 350,000 people's power, to homes and businesses got knocked out. And in my daughter lives about 5 miles from where I live here. She has a big tree in her backyard, and a couple of big tree branches blew down, but fortunately none of those big branches that fell ended up falling on the roof of the house or whatever, because then that would have been probably damaged the roof, and they would have had a big thing to deal with. But a lot of people lost power. And also in, this climate chaos, that was in May 13th of 2014 when he gave that speech. But I noticed that in around here, and starting in August of 2014, we had 5 or 6 inches of rain in August of 2014 in 1 hour. And I worked the midnight shift at my job, and I was on my way to work, and I didn't realize that, it had already rained mostly by the time I left to go to work. But what had happened was that because we got the 5 or 6 inches of rain in such a short period of time, the water under the underpasses on the freeways flooded out. And so some of the freeways that I drive on, they were impassable. They had blocked off things at certain underpasses, and you couldn't get through, so I had to detour around a different way to get to work. And it normally is an hour drive, and it took an extra 45 minutes for me to get home to get to work that night, because of all the detours. But 5 or 6 inches of rain in an hour in this area, I think up to that point was unheard of. It had never happened before, that much rain in such a short period of time here. And so from 2014 now to 2018, every year it just seems like the storms, the windstorms, the tornadoes, the rain, all of this stuff just keeps getting worse every year here in this state where I live. It just keeps getting worse every year. And the Lord told me that this year of 2018 is by far going to be the worst year, and across the country by far, we're probably going to have a record number of tornadoes. That's something that to be alerted to also. But here in this area where I live, every year it just keeps getting worse. Last year we had a period of time in March when the power, there was like wind and rain and stuff in March. It was cold, and at that time it was starting to warm up a little bit, maybe into the mid-30s or something for averages or whatever. I was without power here for 3 days until they could restore it. And here in the city that I live in, the only place that was open anywhere around me for that 3 days was the local Walmart store. That's about a mile and a half from here, and they had a backup generator. So that was the only place that was open, so I shopped there. And then, but I noticed that by the time that they got the generator up, it had been some time that it took them to get that backup generator running. They had a lot of frozen food. You know, they had workers over there. They had the area around the frozen food all taped off, and they had they had big carts or whatever, and they were just loading that frozen food into those carts and stuff, and maybe about 6 employees just to throw the stuff out. So they had already lost a lot of frozen food before they could get that generator running. And that was last March of 2017. And of course I had, damage I lost some shingles on my roof. I lost some skirting around the bottom of my place or whatever, and I had to replace it. I just spent about $40 or $50 for replacement skirting and got longer stuff, and then slid that stuff, those panels up in there, and then we put like screws in there to hold those panels to reinforce them. And when we had this windstorm the other day, it pretty much held compared to the years before, so it was a good idea to put the screws in and get the longer panels. Some of this other stuff I just want to cover real quickly it was mentioned in another video about the 500 Days to Climate Chaos that the radiant energy in the planets of the solar system, the other planets in our solar system, have become brighter recently because they're being bombarded with some kind of energy, and it's causing them to become brighter. Also, the planet Venus and the moon have been growing brighter in the last year or two. However, at the same time all of these things are getting brighter, our sun actually is the energy output of our sun is decreasing, and something is causing that, and the energy output of our sun is actually decreasing. And then of course recently we had the which you can go on YouTube, type in orange snow, and up will come a bunch of videos from a couple of months ago when they got orange snow over in Europe, which had a lot of iron nitrate particles in it, a lot of iron in it. And at first they were saying that it was sand from the Sahara over in Africa that got up into the upper atmosphere and then fell down in some of those parts of Europe and Russia. But when the scientists went and got samples of the orange snow and analyzed them, they found a lot of iron nitrate. They found more iron nitrate than would be in the sand in Africa And so therefore it wasn't sand that got up in the upper atmosphere from the Sahara, because there was too much iron nitrates in the samples. So it was in the upper atmosphere. So like, I've never heard of anything like that happening before in my whole lifetime. I never heard of a story like that. So we're seeing things that are just, they've happened, they're happening for the first time. They're unprecedented things. And then, of course, there's, I wanted to cover just briefly cracks in the earth that are happening. The earth is cracking in certain spots. There was a video from 1/28/18 that somebody did from Union Gap, Rattlesnake Ridge, in Washington State that has a big crack in the ground, and they did a video about that. And then there was also in 1/28/18 that occurred, and then in March of 2018, somebody did a video about parts of Greenland cracking apart. March 14th, there was cracks in the earth in Kenya. Somebody did a video about these large cracks opening up in Kenya and Africa. And then there was on March 20th of 2018 also, there was a region of Cusco in Peru that is opening up cracks and things over in Peru. And then, of course, there were cracks in a video in 2017 in the state of Arizona. A crack opened up. And then also a crack in Antarctica. You know, there was a video about cracks opening up in Antarctica. Then I wanted to mention Yellowstone, February 14, 2018. Video about the magma chamber pressure is increasing. In Yellowstone, it's building up. The magma chamber is building up, and there are scientists over there monitoring that. So at the same time, they're saying, well, we don't think anything will happen for, years and years and years. But yet they're over there monitoring, the thing right now, because they're, thinking that, there could be an eruption. And that's why it's getting monitored. And then the last thing I wanted to mention in this video was the sun simulators. What is their purpose? Why are they up there in the sky? And it just occurred to me that maybe they were created for the 3 days of darkness. But when they were manufactured, they were put up in orbit around the planet. It's like, nothing was ever mentioned. You never seen nothing on mainstream media about it. You didn't hear anything about them making them. You didn't hear anything about why they were putting them up there. It's like been a total news, just nothing said about them at all. And then people started taking pictures of them, doing videos of them, where you could see that the sun simulator is hexagonal shaped. And there's videos with them up in the sky at different times in different countries, and you can actually see the hexagon shape of the sun simulator in the video. So they're there. I think some of them were somebody did a video about the things being manufactured in Germany. And then I think Sunbeam here in the United States has a prototype for a sun simulator, and somebody did a video on that. So all you'd have to do is type in sun simulators, and up will come all kinds of videos on that. And then lastly, you could type in animal die-offs, and you could see how in the last few years, increasingly around the planet, and a lot of these conditions aren't limited to the United States, they're worldwide. This is happening all over, which, like Isaiah 24, it's talking about the whole planet, not just the United States. But we've got to wonder, when the earthquake record goes over 400 and some in one day, then this idea, this concept of this great shaking, as it's being called, that's supposed to come real soon, and there's supposed to be judgments here in this country, which is going to cause repentance of unsaved people, and also repentance of people that are saved that are not serving and not really paying attention to what's going on. Maybe the five unwise virgins, maybe some of them will wake up and take everything serious before it's too late, before the rapture occurs. But that's another thing you can look up, the animal die-offs. And I just wanted to make the point that, as these judgments are going to happen, I was shown a dream about a volcano eruption just a month or so ago. And also, my first video that I ever did was on a national state of emergency that gets declared in the country that might shut everything down for up to a week. And those things I know, I prayed about and asked the Lord about since I did these videos on these things that I'm seeing. Also, Psalm 83 war. Those things are going to take place before the rapture. And there's going to be, I know that we're in a great falling away. I understand that. It's one of the signs of the end for the great falling away. But when I talk about revival, I'm talking about a brief revival which is brought about by the judgments that occur here in the very near future. That will bring about a brief revival, and also a period of time when you're going to see some pretty miraculous miracles taking place. And all of this will take place just before the rapture. Simultaneously, you still have the great falling away. You still have the majority of the church that's asleep, and you have the majority of the churches that, instead of talking about any of the stuff that we're talking about here and warning the people to get ready and get close to the Lord and read your scriptures every day and pray every day and do all these things and focus on Him, and then focus on trying to win souls up until the rapture happens. But in the church in general, all you're hearing about is prosperity and how Jesus can make you rich. And people are basically, they go to church, and the people that run the brick and mortar churches, they tell the people what they want to hear, because if they tell them what they don't want to hear, they will go out the door, and out the door, when they go out the door will go their money. And in a lot of those churches, that's what that's about. It's about the money. It's about the money they're raking in. And so they're going to tell the people what they want to hear, because they want them to continue to give 10% or more a year of their income. And that stuff was going on, brothers and sisters, even way back when I got saved and accepted Him, Jesus as Lord and Savior, and was baptized. It's always gone on. There's always been, behind the whole services and all that stuff, the churches and everything are a business. Even though, it's Bible related and all this stuff, but they're a business, because if you have a building, you have a mortgage on the building that's owned by, it could even be a big denominational church in the country. But, they go and buy these buildings, or they have them built, and they have mortgages on them, and they have, utilities, gas and electric, and so there's overhead expenses in maintaining, and there's maintenance also. And then sometimes they have a situation where they got to put an addition onto the church or something. They expand it and stuff like that, and remodel and do things like that. All that stuff costs money. So when you go into the average churches now across the country, how many ministers and churches and across the United States are really talking about this stuff right now? How many of them are? You're hearing it on YouTube. This is where you're hearing it. And it's become, these channels here have become it almost takes you back to the Book of Acts in the beginning of the church or something, where they had the home churches And this is like the equivalent of them. And then you're going to see a period of time of some great miracles right before the rapture takes place. So it's going to be kind of like it was in the book of Acts, only greater. The revival and the time of miracles and everything will be very brief, but they will occur before the rapture. And they're going to begin and start occurring very soon. And that's what I've been told. And in fact, I was told that many years ago. And I've just kept watching and waiting to see when it was going to happen. And finally, we're at the door for all that stuff to happen. And then, of course, recently I've been reminded of it. So that pretty much concludes the video. Somebody can always go back. It's a lot of information here that I'm giving. So you can always go back and rewind the thing or rewatch it, and then you can go on here onto YouTube and look up any one of those subjects that I mentioned, and a whole bunch of videos. All you got to do is type that in, and all kinds of videos will come up on the subject. So it's all documented. There's scientists, seismologists, and all these other people, and of course that foreign minister of France. Something's going on. Something is going on that we're not being told about, and I think it all has to do with Wormwood and the planet. Whatever that thing is, it's getting closer. It's still probably a great distance away from us in terms of how many miles out there it is. It's probably a vast distance from us, but moving in this direction. And if Psalm 83 war is about ready to take place, and right after that the rapture, then you start the 7-year period. And then when the trumpet judgments come here in the 8th chapter of the book of Revelation, it'll be at that time that Wormwood will arrive. And then you'll see the pole reversal, and you'll see all that stuff that's written in the book of Isaiah. That stuff will be happening then too, simultaneously. With those two things are connected in the scripture. So that pretty much concludes my presentation on that. And I would just like to say I wanted to mention too, because I mentioned it sometime in my video descriptions about subscribing to the channel. If somebody subscribes to my channel, I'll subscribe to your channel. But when I get new subscribers here lately, like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've gotten subscribers. YouTube don't always notify me about who it is that's subscribing. They do sometimes, but maybe about half of the time. And then the other half the time, somebody subscribes and the numbers go up, but I don't get any notifications. So if you do decide to subscribe to the channel, please, in the video, like today's video, or whenever you subscribe, the video at the time you subscribe, please, comment in the comment section of the video and let me know, that you have subscribed, so that I'll know where to go, where to go to your channel, so that I can subscribe to you. And I want to make sure I mentioned it one time on a video, because I put it in the ad description here in the video, but I'm not getting notified, about how many people are subscribing, who they are. They're not telling me. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Other than that, I hope everybody has a blessed day in the Lord. And I'll catch you in the next video. God bless each and every one of you.